Welcome to our demo of RCReports. I'm Paul Hammond. I'm one of the founders of RCReports, and my expertise is in determining reasonable compensation for closely held business owners. A few other people I'd like to make you aware of. This is Jack Selesky, and Jack is our VP of Education, and Jack is an expert on how reasonable compensation applies to tax and business situations. This is Bill Schneider. He is our statistician and mathematician, and he heads up our proprietary wage database. Say hello to Richard Perry. Richard's our chief programmer and head nerd, as he likes to be referred to, and Richard works very hard to make sure our software is very simple and intuitive to use. And last but not least is Molly St. Dennis. Molly heads up customer support and training. If you need any additional training or have any questions, please contact Molly or somebody on her team. RCReports is a cloud platform that determines reasonable compensation for small and medium-sized business owners, but we didn't build it for their use directly, we built it for the professional advisor. We built it for CPAs, EAs, valuators to use when you need to determine a reasonable compensation figure for a client. Knowing a reasonable compensation figure is only half the equation. Putting it into context of the tax or business situation is what they need their trusted advisor for. It was built around IRS criteria, guidelines, and court rulings, and it will deliver an independent, unbiased, reasonable compensation figure. And that's key for it to be defensible with the IRS or defendable in court. And we have an excellent track record in both of these areas, and you can see more at RCReports.com. Here's what you'll love about RCReports. Results are available immediately. Either you or your client go through a short online interview. At the end of that interview, we generate a reasonable compensation figure. That figure is editable for up to 30 days. This gives you and your clients a chance to look at the report and make any needed changes. You only need one account for your firm. You can add as many additional users as you need to. You get access to our exclusive database of wages, about 3.5 times larger than anything else out there. At last count, we were just under 13 million individual pieces of wage data. We cover just over 800 occupational profiles, cross-referenced by about 6,500 different titles, but most importantly, RCReports is trusted. Our agenda for today, we're going to tour the RCReports dashboard. We're going to cover selecting the right report for your need, both in purpose and approach. We'll apply RCReports to a case study. This is a great way to see RCReports in action, and we have a special offer for those of you joining us today. The first thing you need to know about RCReports is where to find us, and you can find us at RCReports.com. If you don't have an account with us, the first thing we'll need you to do is set one up by clicking on Get Started. First thing we ask you to do is to confirm that you're a professional advisor. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, we built RCReports for the professional advisor. If a small business owner finds our site, we do have a referral network, and I'll talk a little bit more about the referral network later and how you can opt into it if you'd like to. Once you've confirmed that you're a professional advisor, enter your firm's name. We'll check and make sure you don't already have an account set up with us. Then we'll gather your firm's information. Choose your subscription level. Then enter your information as the primary firm administrator. And confirm your subscription and check out. And we'll send you a temporary password, and RCReports will be available to use immediately. Once you've created an account and put a subscription in place, next step is to log in. You are now logged into your RCReports dashboard. You're looking at My Account, that of Paul Hammond of Potomac Tax and Valuation. The first thing I'd like you to do after you log in for the first time is come down here to the My Profile tab, click on My Password, and change the temporary password to one of your own. We designed RCReports to be client-centric. What I mean by that is most of the time you're logged into RCReports dashboard, it'll be here in the Clients tab. As you can see, my account is well used. I have a couple of dozen clients and hundreds of reports have been run. I'm going to close my profile and bring up the profile of a new user. This is the account of Sam Miller. And Sam is brand new to RCReports, and he is an additional user of Potomac Tax and Valuation. And like all new users to RCReports, his dashboard is empty. The best way to get to know how RCReports works is to add a new client. I recommend when you're beginning with RCReports to start with a Jane Doe profile as a test client. It's helpful to have a test client that you can play around with and test out different scenarios. I'm going to go ahead and add in Jane Doe, and her business is Jane's Donuts. Your client's first name, last name, business name, and industry are the only required fields. Email address and phone number are for your convenience. If you add a client's email, you'll be able to use the RCReports system emails to send automated emails to your client, such as links to the client interview or the finished report. At RCReports, we take your privacy and your client's privacy seriously. We do not contact your clients in any way. Once you've added your client's required and optional information, you can create their profile. In the first half of this demo, I'm going to walk us all the way through the dashboard without completing a client report. In the second half of this demo, we'll walk through a case study that addresses the different types of reports and approaches you can choose from. For now, let's take a look at what those report options are by clicking on New Report. When you click on New Report, it'll bring up our current report offerings, and there are 4 of them. Anytime you see these little blue information icons, you can click on them for additional information. The first report is tax compliance for S-Corps, and it is designed specifically to address the IRS requirement that shareholder employees of S-Corps pay themselves reasonable compensation. The report is built around IRS guidelines and court cases that address this issue. The next report is tax compliance for C-Corps, and it addresses the IRS requirement that compensation be ordinary, necessary, and reasonable. This report is also built around IRS guidelines and court cases. The next report addresses normalizing reasonable compensation for valuations and appraisals. As part of the valuation process, valuators will normalize the owner's salary and that of other key management and family members as part of their overall valuation report. The fourth report is our planning report. Think of this report as our universal or generic report. This report can address any issue where you need to determine a reasonable compensation figure for a closely held business owner. It can be used for issues such as entity planning, shareholder disputes, divorce, succession planning, estate planning, etc. Each report is written to a specific issue, so when it is presented to your client or someone in a position of authority, such as an examiner, judge, or opposing counsel, the report will address the issue at hand and include details from the client interview, a synopsis of the methodology used, and additional supporting material. Once you've selected the report type, the next step is to choose the approach. The cost approach, aka the many hats approach, takes into consideration all the tasks a business owner provides to their company, such as administration, accounting, marketing, purchasing, etc. The cost approach breaks the time spent by the owner down into the various tasks that are performed. Wage levels are assigned for each task based on the owner's proficiency, and then added back together to obtain a hypothetical replacement cost for the owner. The cost approach generally works best for small businesses where the owner performs multiple job duties, i.e. wears multiple hats. The market approach, aka the industry comparison approach, determines the owner's compensation by looking at the compensation of employees in businesses of similar size and from the same industry. This approach then compares both the business and the position to that of its peers to draw a conclusion for what reasonable compensation should be. The market approach generally works best for medium businesses where the owner provides only one duty, management of the business. Last is the income approach, aka the independent investors test. And the income approach does not rely on comparability data, as the cost and market approaches do, but instead it seeks to determine whether a hypothetical investor would be satisfied with their return on investment when looking at the financial performance of the business in conjunction with the compensation level of the owner. The income approach generally works best when there is no comparability data available. Once you've selected the approach, you're ready for the client interview. As I mentioned a little earlier, in the second half of this demo, I'm going to come back to a client profile and run us through a case study. But for now, I'm going to close Sam's profile and bring my profile back up for the remainder of the demonstration. Let's complete our look at the Clients tab. I'm going to bring up the profile of Thomas Quinn. To make edits to Thomas's profile, I'm going to click on Edit Client, and in here I can make changes to his business name, his email, phone number, or change his industry code. If you need to make an edit to a client's name, please contact us and we can make that change from here. You can also archive a client. Archiving a client does not delete any information, it simply removes them from your active client list. It's a way of helping keep your dashboard organized. I'll go ahead and archive Thomas, close his profile, and when we come back to our active clients, no more Thomas. You can see all your archived clients by clicking here. And reactivating a client is as simple as archiving them. Let's go ahead and reactivate Thomas. Close his profile, go back to our active clients, and there he is. We designed RCReports for multiple users. On a user-by-user basis, you can decide how to share clients and their reports. And we'll touch more on this a little bit later. Let's take a look at shared clients. In here, we can see all the other users of the Potomac and Tax Valuation account and their clients, and we can click on any of these client profiles, open them up, and take a look at the reports inside. This wraps up our look at the Clients tab. Let's take a look at the Reports tab next. The Report tab is a simple way to find and view reports without opening a client's profile. Active reports are reports within the 30-day edit period or have not yet been completed. And locked reports are a chronological listing of all your reports that have been finalized and locked. The drop-down options will vary depending on whether the report is still in the edit period or whether it's been locked, and will vary slightly depending on the approach. The option of sending the online interview to your client is only available for the cost approach, and that's because the interview is a little bit more involved than the marketer income approach, and you may want to have your client enter this information on their own. To send an interview link to your client, select Send Interview Link. You can send a custom invitation by copying the report link and pasting it into your own email, or select Send Automated Email Invitation to your client. I recommend you send one of these to yourself and get an idea of what it looks like. And you can do this by putting your email address into the Jane Doe client profile and sending one to yourself. Edit Interview will open the online interview on your computer, and you can go in and make any needed changes. The Advisor Worksheet is where you can manually make changes to the reasonable compensation figure and add additional information and notes to the report. Send a Report link will send a PDF copy of the report to your client and is very similar to Send Interview Link. View Print Report will open a PDF copy of the report on your computer. Reports are editable for up to 30 days and will display a draft stamp. After 30 days, the report will automatically lock and the draft watermark will disappear. Use Lock Report to finalize and lock a report before the 30-day edit period is up. Locking a report is final and cannot be undone, and it will remove the draft watermark. Delete Report is only available for reports that have not been finalized and locked and cannot be undone. Client Profile will open up your client's profile, as will clicking on their name. And last is View Log, and View Log will open up an audit trail for the report. Next, let's take a look at the Administration tab. By default, the person that registers and creates the account will be the primary administrator. You can add as many additional administrators as you'd like, and I'll show you how to do that in just a second. We are in the Your Firm section, and in here you can edit your firm's details, such as phone number and address. Account history is a listing of all reports that have been initiated by user and client. This comes in helpful for billing. Users will contain all of your active and deactivated users. At any time, you can deactivate a user, use this feature to lock out a user, or to free up a seat in your account. You can reactivate a deactivated user at any time, as long as you have an unused seat. Adding a new user is simple, and all that's required is first name, last name, and email address. Let's take a look at permissions by pulling up the profile of Sam Miller, who we met a little bit earlier. Share clients. Will Sam's clients be visible to other users? Access shared clients. Will Sam be able to see other users' clients? Alternate administrator. Would we like Sam to act as an alternate administrator on the account? We currently have all these permissions set to no. Let's pull up Sam's dashboard and take a look at it. You'll notice there's no administration tab and no subscription tab because Sam is not an alternate administrator. And in the clients tab, you'll notice that he does not have access to other users' clients. Let's edit Sam's permissions. We'll give him permission to share his clients with other users. We'll give him access to other users' clients, and we'll designate him as an alternate administrator and update his profile. The next time Sam logs in, he'll have the administration tab and the subscription tab. And under clients, he'll now have permission to view other users' clients. Next up is Referral Network. When we built RCReports, we built it as a tool for the professional advisor. When we discovered that we had hundreds of business owners a month landing on our site looking for guidance on reasonable compensation, we built the RCReports Referral Network, and this is where we can send clients your direction. Business owners can go to the Referral Network and find a tax or financial advisor in their area to help them with their reasonable compensation issue. Once you've opted into the Referral Network, you can click here and find your listing by entering your zip code. Here we will see Potomac Tax and Valuation, and because Potomac Tax and Valuation is a premium subscriber, we had the option of adding some additional information about our firm and our logo. You can opt in and out of the referral network at any time. The next feature is reassigning clients, and this is a premium feature. In here you can shuffle clients among all your users of the account. Users in blue are active and users in gray are inactive. In this scenario, Sam Miller is new to RCReports and he is replacing Karen Green, and we're going to reassign all of Karen's clients by selecting them here to Sam. Once you've selected all the clients, we'll reassign them to Sam. We'll pull Sam's profile back up, and now we'll see all of Karen's former clients in Sam's profile. The last two features are for premium subscribers. Premium content and logo is where premium subscribers can upload their logo and add additional information about their firm. That'll be included in the referral network. If you have any issues uploading your logo, please contact us and we can help. And last is premium support information. Next, let's take a look at the Tools tab. We're in a section now called Warp Speed Wages, and this is where you can come in and look up a wage quickly on the fly without having to initiate a report. This is a premium feature. First thing you're going to want to do is select your data set. Cross-industry wage data is what powers our cost approach reports. Industry-specific wage data powers our market approach reports. And the independent investors test uses a formula, and that formula powers our income approach reports. Let's go ahead and look up a wage from our cross-industry wage data set. And we're going to do that for Boulder, Colorado. And I'm going to look up CEO. And I chose Chief Executive Officer for a couple of reasons. First, it's important to look at the description that goes along with the title. A lot of small and even medium-sized business owners will carry the title of CEO, but it won't match their actual responsibilities. For example, it says here that a CEO will plan, direct, or coordinate operational activities at the highest level of management with the help of subordinate executives and staff managers. And this simply doesn't describe what most small and even some medium-sized business owners do for their business. A more appropriate choice would be general manager or office manager. Second, you'll see 5 different wage points down here that map back to 5 different proficiency levels. And with RCReports, you get access to our proprietary wage database, and it's about 3.5 times larger than anything else out there you're going to find. And I know for a fact that if you go to a free source of wage data, such as the BLS, you will not find these 5 data points. Do a lookup in the industry-specific wage data set, and the inputs in here are identical to the inputs for running a market approach report. Let's go and do one for a subcontractor. Select our inputs. Again, we'll go back to Colorado, this time the Denver area. And once we've selected all of our inputs, we'll generate a reasonable compensation figure. You can continue to change the inputs around until you've fine-tuned the report to your liking. But one of the nice features in here is you can click here and can convert it to a report and attach it to an existing client. And the independent investors test that uses the algorithm for the income approach is very similar. Enter your inputs. Generate your reasonable compensation figure, and similar to the industry wage data, you can convert it to a report and attach it to an existing client. Next, let's take a look at the Entity Planner. The Entity Planner is a free tool for all of our subscribers, and it's a great place to demonstrate to your clients how moving from a pass-through entity such as a Schedule C or a partnership to an S-Corp could save them some money in employment taxes. Let's run through a quick demonstration. We have a client who's a Schedule C who generates $120,000 in net profits. We've determined their reasonable compensation to be $75,000. We estimate their FUTA and SUTA at $500 a year. We're going to take over doing their payroll, and for that we're going to charge them $600 a year. And we're also picking up a new corporate income tax client for preparing their 1120S. We're going to charge them $900. And we can compare those entities, print this out, and show our clients that by moving from a Schedule C to an S-Corp, we'll save them about $4,900 a year in employment taxes. And we are currently in the process of updating this to take into account the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. The resource library is packed with helpful tools, and some of our most popular are here at the top. The Prepare Penalty Checklist and Stress Test. The stress test is a great way to take your client's current reasonable compensation figure and stress test it against IRS and court guidelines. Demonstrate to them how it may be unreasonably low, possibly even unreasonably high. And the Prepare Penalty Checklist is a great way to protect yourself from preparer penalties should an IRS reasonable compensation challenge come your way. Next is a 3-part issue letter series on reasonable compensation. And this series is designed to both educate your clients on the topic of reasonable compensation and urge them to research and document their reasonable compensation figure over a 3-year period. This came to us from one of our users. They've had great success with it, and other users that have began to implement it have also told us they've had great success. Next is an engagement letter, another very popular tool in here is paper versions of our online interviews. You can print these out and email them to your client. A lot of our users will insert them into their annual planners. It's a great way of gathering that information from your client. Once you get it back, you can input it into RCReports create a report and present it to your client without your client ever seeing the RCReports software. And our users like that. It builds a lot more value with them, and they get a lot less price resistance. The rest of the information in here is a one-stop shop on the topic of reasonable compensation. There's information in here from the IRS, such as the job aid and the IRS fact sheet, key court cases on reasonable compensation. It's a great place to come in if you're looking for some additional supporting information. And last is continuing education. And at RCReports, we're dedicated to teaching on the topic of reasonable compensation. And as an RCReports subscriber, you can take any of our classes at no charge. You can pop in here at any time and see what's available. Next up is the My Profile tab. We took a look at this tab a little earlier. This is where you can change your password. Also in here, you can edit your email address and set your personal preferences. Would you like to share your clients with other users of your account? You can set your default preference. Would you like your clients to see the report results at the end of the online interview? And this is for the cost approach only. And this option can be overridden on a report-by-report basis and is a premium feature. Next is the Help tab. In here you can quickly link to our knowledge base. Meet us for a screen share, maybe for some one-on-one training, and find a copy of terms and conditions. And if you hadn't already noticed, down here in the corner is our support widget, and in here you can find answers to frequently asked questions and contact us. Last is the subscription tab, and it will show your account status. If you're a starter or basic subscriber, this is where you can upgrade or add additional seats, and it's also where you will renew. Welcome to our case study of stone concrete. I would like to introduce you to Scott Stone at age 30. Up until this point in his life, Scott has been a professional student. He has an undergraduate degree in chemistry, a master's in chemistry, and he's currently working on his doctorate. Scott has a little bit of a peculiar look on his face because his father's just come to talk to him, and his father started Stone Concrete 25 years ago, and he's just let Scott know that he can no longer continue to run Stone Concrete because of health reasons, and he's asked his son to take it over. Scott agrees. He's worked in the family business off and on over the last 25 years, and he is now the owner of Stone Concrete. He's a full-time employee. He inherits the 5 employees working there. They're doing about $250,000 a year, and Scott goes from being a full-time student to working 60-plus hours a week for Stone Concrete. We're going to begin this case study by determining Scott's reasonable compensation using the cost approach. The 3 approaches for determining reasonable compensation are frequently compared to the 3 approaches a real estate appraiser would use to value real estate. So if we're making that comparison here for the cost approach, it would be very similar to how a real estate appraiser would price out the cost of a new home. They would start out with a set of plans, they'd do a takeoff of what would be needed, they would multiply everything out, add it together, and they would come up with a cost to build that house. Also known as the many hats approach, the cost approach is very similar. It takes into consideration all the tasks a business owner provides to their company, such as administration, accounting, marketing, purchasing, etc. It breaks the time spent by the owner down into the various tasks that are performed. Wage levels are assigned for each task based on the owner's proficiency, and then they're added back together to obtain a hypothetical replacement cost for the owner using comparability data. The comparability data we're looking for in the cost approach is what's known as cross-industry data, and we're looking for it at the local level. The theory here: small businesses tend to hire from their community, and they're not picky about what industry their next employee is coming from as long as they can do the work that needs to be done for the amount of money the business has to offer. We're looking for hourly wage data, and the cost approach generally works best for what we're going to call small businesses, and we'll talk a little bit more about business size in a minute. As Scott's CPA, I sent him out a cost approach questionnaire. Scott filled it out, he returned it to me, and on the screen right now is an abbreviated version of that questionnaire. I'm going to take the information on the screen and I'm going to enter it into RCReports, and we're going to produce a cost approach report for Scott. I'm going to open my RCReports dashboard. I'm going to navigate to the Clients tab. I'm going to open Scott's profile, and we're going to start a new report for Scott. The first selection we need to make is, why are we running the report? What's the purpose? Is it for tax compliance for an S or a C Corp? Are we working on evaluation and we need to normalize the owner's compensation, or are we doing some planning? In this case study, we're Scott's CPA and we're doing his taxes. Stone Concrete is an S Corp, so we're going to run a tax compliance S Corp report using the cost approach. We're going to run it for 2018. And the last option down here is a premium feature. The online interview for the cost approach can be completed by either you or your client. If you have your client complete the online interview, you can select whether those report results are displayed to them at the end or not. If you'd like them displayed, leave this on yes. If you'd like to suppress that so you can look at the report results and then share them with your client later, select no. Because I've gathered the information from Scott ahead of time, I do want to see those report results at the end. I'm going to select yes and initiate the report. As I mentioned a second ago, if I wanted Scott to complete the online interview himself, I'd click here, an email would go out to Scott. He could follow that link, go through the online interview when it's convenient for him. For most small business owners, it'll take them about 15 to 20 minutes to complete the online interview. Since we've gathered the information from Scott ahead of time, it'll take us less than 5 minutes. So let's go ahead and begin work on the report by clicking here. You'll notice that the online interview has opened up in a new tab within my browser. And this is the welcome page, and this is more for your clients than it is for you, but I would like to point out that the online interview is not designed for simultaneous use. It's designed for either you or your client to walk through, but not for both of you to be working on it at the same time on separate computers. Doing so will cause unexpected results and unintentional changes to the interview answers. It includes the 7 steps in completing the online interview, some other helpful tips, but let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we need to do is drill down to the location of Scott's business, and that is Chicago, Illinois. We'll select Illinois and then Cook County. Because RCReports works in the cloud, every time we input an answer and save it, it's uploaded. So if you leave the interview for any reason, when you come back, it'll pick up where you left off. Scott's told us that he works more than 40 hours a week, but for the S Corp report, we limit hours to 40. And we do this because RCReports uses the most recent IRS guidelines in court cases. In a recent court case known as McAllery, both the IRS expert and the courts capped hours at 40, even though Mr. McAllery worked well over 40 hours a week. He was in the 70 or 80 hours a week range. For more on the McAllery case, you can find it in the resource library located in the Tools tab. Save our answer and continue the interview. The next step of the interview is called standard tasks. When we developed RCReports, we came up with 8 standard categories that most small business owners perform tasks in: maintenance, administrative, marketing, finance, all the way down through management. In this section of the interview, we simply select the tasks that are performed regularly for the business. I gathered this information from Scott using the questionnaire. Scott selected nothing in maintenance and nothing in administrative, but under marketing, he had selected sales representative. And under accounting and financing, bookkeeper. No selections under human resources or information technology. Under inventory, he had selected purchasing clerk. And the final category is management. This is our most comprehensive category, and a tip in here is look at the description. Although a lot of business owners would like to have the title of chief executive, the description more than likely doesn't fit, at least for the smaller businesses. And if we select the wrong task, we're not going to get an accurate, reasonable compensation figure. And this is also one area where we see egos creep in. So Scott, after speaking with him a little bit, accurately selected business office manager. And for his small company of only 5 employees, this is probably a very accurate choice. I do want to select GM also, because I want to compare and contrast these 2 tasks, and we'll come in when we do an edit in a little while, and we'll remove GM. Summary of our answers, and we'll continue the interview. After we've selected all the standard tasks that Scott performs, now we need to put in what he does specific to his business. And Scott's told us he does 2 things. He still finishes concrete. So we're going to do a keyword search on concrete and add concrete finisher to his profile. We'll double check the description and add it. In here are roughly 850 occupations, and they're cross-referenced by roughly 6,500 different titles. You can do a keyword search, or you can use the alpha tabs on the left. Scott also has told us that he does all the maintenance on the equipment for the business. So this time let's use the alpha tab. We'll scroll down and we'll add maintenance mechanic to his profile. You can add as many additional tasks in here as you need to account for all the different hats that the business owner is wearing. Continue the interview. Now that we've selected all the tasks that Scott performs regularly for his business, now we need to apportion the time. Scott's told us that he spends 10% of his time marketing and 10% of his time in bookkeeping. And you can roll over the magnifying glasses and it'll remind you of your selections in that category. Purchasing clerk, Scott spends 5% of his time and 15% of his time in management, and the remainder of his time in the My Business category of concrete finisher and maintenance mechanic. Once we've accounted for 100% of our time, we click on Save and Continue and move into the last step of the interview. In the final step of the interview, we need to set the proficiency levels for all the different tasks Scott performs for his business. Because Scott's fairly new to the selling piece of stone concrete, he's rated himself as below average. And since he's fairly new to the business world as well, he's rated himself as below average as a bookkeeper. Average for purchasing clerk. Now under management, because we've selected two different tasks in here, besides setting the proficiency level, we also have to apportion the time. Scott's rated himself average as a manager. And let's go ahead and split these up 50-50 because we're going to be comparing and contrasting them. We'll come in a little while and we'll remove GM. Under the final category of My Business, because Scott's worked in the business off and on over the last 25 years, he has rated himself above average in maintenance and in finishing concrete. And we'll go ahead and split these up roughly 50-50. And once we've accounted for all the time and set all the proficiency levels, click on Save and Continue. And at this point in time, the online interview is finished. By clicking Continue, it'll generate the final reasonable compensation report. And we come up with a reasonable compensation figure for Scott of $70,422. Let's scroll down to the second page, and this is our details page. This is a key page in examinations and in court. This page shows exactly how the reasonable compensation figure was reached. Earlier I said I wanted to compare and contrast general and operations manager with business office manager, and as you can see, a GM pays significantly more than a business office manager, and all the inputs in the interview will have an effect on the final reasonable compensation figure. In a few minutes we're going to go in and make some edits to this report, and when we do, we'll take out GM, and that'll change our final figure. Additional pages of the report, we have a business summary. We have a page describing how the reasonable compensation figure was calculated and some additional information on the methodology that was used. Some other considerations and additional information from both the IRS and the courts. A summary of the tasks that are selected, including their descriptions. And the last page is included in both our S and C Corp tax compliance reports. And this comes to us from an IRS examiner, an appeals agent that we worked with when we were developing RCReports. He said that adding reasonable compensation report to the corporate minutes will make a reasonable compensation figure all but bulletproof. Let's go back to our RCReports dashboard and open up Scott's profile. Here's the report we just finished for Scott. It's in the edit window. Let's go in and make an edit to that report. Click on the options drop down and select Edit Interview. The interview will open up in a new tab within your browser, and you can click here and go back to any of the steps within the interview except location. Once you've selected location, it's locked in. RCReports uploads all the wage data for that area. If you select the wrong area, you'll need to start over with a new report. To remove GM, we want to go to Standard Tasks, go back to the Management tab, and remove GM. Any changes you make to the interview, you do need to save and continue all the way through to the end. Otherwise, the final report won't be updated. No changes in My Tasks. Because we made a change to the management category, the slider was reset to 0, so we'll take that back up to 15%. Save and continue. And before coming in here and editing, I gave Scott a call and I talked with him a little bit about some of his answers on the questionnaire, including management. And because he is new to running stone concrete, I suggested that perhaps average might not be the appropriate proficiency rating, and he agreed. He asked me to change it to below average, so let's go ahead and make that change as well. Save and continue. We finished up making the edits. Let's see what our new reasonable compensation figure looks like. By removing General and Operations Manager and moving Scott's proficiency level from average to below average for Business Office Manager, Scott's reasonable compensation figure came down right about $5,000 a year. Let's meet Scott Stone at 45. Over the last 15 years, Stone Concrete has grown quite a bit. Now has 35 employees. Scott's the chief executive, doing about $7 million a year in gross revenue. Scott's still working quite a bit, 55 hours roughly. And file this away for a little later, he starts another company called Stone Technologies. Based on this information, we're going to determine Scott's reasonable compensation using the market approach. If we're comparing the market approach to how a real estate appraiser would value real estate, it's very similar to how we would value a house in a tract neighborhood. The neighborhoods are different, but the homes in them are very similar. Find other homes that have sold in the same neighborhood with roughly the same size and finishes to come up with a value for your home. The market approach, also known as the industry comparison approach, is very similar. It determines the owner's compensation by looking at the compensation of employees in businesses of similar size and from the same industry, i.e. the same neighborhood. The market approach focuses strongly on the owner's business and a specific position held by the owner. That's typically going to be a management position such as CEO or general manager. This approach then compares both the business and the position to that of its peers to draw a conclusion for what reasonable compensation should be, using industry-specific comparability data. And the market approach generally works best for what we're going to call medium-sized businesses. So let's take just a minute and talk about business size. Is it a small or is it a medium-sized business? Well, there aren't any good definitions for medium-sized business. But there are some decent definitions for small business. And businesses are generally considered small if they have under $10 million in assets. That's an IRS definition. Under $7.5 million in revenue or 250 employees, that's a Small Business Administration definition. And when you start to think about businesses on the lower end of that scale, doing under $1 million in revenue or just a handful of employees, well, we start to think about small businesses or maybe even micro-sized businesses. And generally in those situations, the owner's wearing multiple hats, so we immediately think of the cost approach. But when you get to the upper end of these limits, 200 employees or 7, 8, 9 million in revenue, well, we're not thinking of really businesses that are that small anymore. We're thinking about more what we consider a medium-sized business. As I mentioned before, you can use any of the approaches with any size business. It's just that some of the approaches are going to fit better for different business sizes, and you really have to match it with the facts and circumstances of the business. A quick example, there was a business that was clearly a medium-sized business, but the owner did not spend any time in the office, nothing in management. He really liked to still be hands-on, so he was wearing multiple hats. And in that situation, we used the cost approach. So in this scenario, we're going to run a market approach for Scott. I've gathered the necessary information. Let's bring up our RCReports dashboard and run that report. Going to open the profile of Scott Stone. Going to start a new report. Stone Concrete is still an S Corp, so we're going to run a tax compliance for S Corp, and this time we're going to select Market Approach. And because the Market Approach and the Income Approach gather far fewer inputs than the Cost Approach does, the Market Approach and the Income Approach will all happen within your dashboard. If you don't have the information at hand, we do have a paper version of the questionnaire, and you can send that out to your client, gather the information. When it comes back to you, you can input it. For 2018, Scott's the Chief Executive. We're back in Chicago, Illinois. Stone Concrete has 35 employees, $7.5 million in revenue. Scott's rated his business at above average, and his experience or proficiency is high. And the first two questions up here are going to be fact-based. The two middle questions here are going to be judgment calls. And these judgment calls are going to be made by both you and your client. And then time dedicated to the business is roughly 55 hours a week. Once we have those inputs, we're going to see our reasonable compensation figure down here. We come up with $244,000 as our suggested figure. But if we get Scott on the phone and we talk with him a little bit about the size of his business and the definition of chief executive, and we find that general manager might be a better fit, we can certainly go back up here, switch chief executive to GM, and you can see there's a significant difference in the suggested wage, roughly $100,000. So again, that's why looking at the descriptions is so important. Once you're happy with your inputs, you can click Convert to a report. The report is saved. Let's go ahead and open that report and take a look at it. And very similar to the Cost Approach report, we have our main page, supporting documents, supporting information, all the way down through our sample corporate minutes. Let's meet Scott Stone at 55. I mentioned a little bit ago that at age 45, Scott started a new company called Stone Technologies. Over the last 10 years, Scott has transitioned out of Stone Concrete and turned the management of that company over to a trusted employee, and he now spends all of his time in Stone Technologies developing new additives and processes for concrete. And he's had his first success. He has a patent on something called seamless concrete. If you've ever gone down a sidewalk or been in a big box store, you've noticed the seams or expansion joints in concrete, and Scott's come up with an additive and a process that eliminates that. And it has huge applications in both the construction world and in road and bridge. And if I didn't mention this earlier, this case study is based on a real person. Scott's working on other additives currently, including one for concrete that will keep snow and ice from building up on it. Imagine never having to shovel a sidewalk or plow another road. We wish Scott good luck. Scott recently had Stone Technologies valued at roughly $6 million, with an expectation that over the next year that valuation will increase by about $2.7 million. And for this type of a company, investors would expect an ROI of roughly 20%. Based on this information, we're going to determine Scott's reasonable compensation using the income approach. If we're comparing the income approach for determining reasonable compensation to how a real estate appraiser would value real estate, it's going to be very similar to how we would value commercial real estate, where the investor might be curious what the market or cost approach is, but what they're really interested in is their return on investment. In other words, if I buy this building, how much money am I going to make? Also known as the independent investors test, the income approach does not rely on comparability data like the cost and market approaches do. Instead, it seeks to determine whether a hypothetical investor would be satisfied with their return on investment when looking at the financial performance of the business in conjunction with the compensation level of the owner. And we tend to use the income approach for what we call outliers. So what's an outlier? An outlier is an individual with a very unique skill or occupation. It can also be someone who's achieving spectacular results far and above their peers, sometimes referred to as a superior or key employee. When we have somebody that fits this profile, we may need to determine their reasonable compensation by means other than comparability data. For the trivia buffs out there, the gentleman on the screen is Gary Dahl, the inventor of the pet rock. and he would be a good candidate for the income approach. Trying to come up with a reasonable compensation figure for a small business owner wearing many hats as a cashier and as a shipping clerk putting rocks in boxes, we're probably not going to come up with a salary that's going to make sense for somebody who made millions and millions of dollars selling rocks. So using the information on the screen, let's run an income approach report for Scott. Let's bring up our RCReports dashboard. We're going to begin on our Clients tab, and we're going to open the profile of Scott Stone of Stone Technologies this time. And because we haven't run a report for Stone Technologies yet, this will be our first one. When we set up Stone Technologies, we set it up as a C Corp, so we're going to run a tax compliance for C Corp using the income approach. First thing we're going to do is select our year and enter our fair market value at the beginning of the year of $6 million. And then our estimated increase in fair market value by the end of the year of $1.75 million. And our target return or independent investors rate of 20%. As soon as we've added those inputs, we get our reasonable compensation figure for Scott of $550,000 based on the income approach, also known as the independent investors test, and this uses the same formula that the IRS uses. We'll convert it to a report, open it up, and very similar to the market approach and the cost approach, we now have an income approach report. Again, including the summary and additional information. And last but not least, the sample corporate meeting minutes. This finishes up our case study of Scott Stone with an income approach, a market approach, and a cost approach report. Next, I'd like to talk a little bit about pricing and billing strategies. In a recent poll, we asked our subscribers how they were budgeting for RCReports, and 76% responded that they added an additional amount to a technology fee if they were already charging one. 13% responded that they built it into overhead, and that tended to be for larger firms. And some practices increased the cost of certain tax packages, such as an 1120S. We then asked if you're charging per report, how are you charging and how much? 72% responded that they are doing value billing and charging between $250 and $500 per report. 16% are charging a flat fee for the report plus some amount for their time. And just under 12% reported giving it away for free or charging very little. After talking with our subscribers, most of them are using a combination of these billing practices depending on the client situation. RCReports is available at 3 different subscription levels. We have a 3-month unlimited subscription called our Starter for $2.99. From there you can move up to one of our 2 annual plans. Our basic subscription includes some features not available to Starter and 2 seats. That works out to roughly $62 per month or $31 per month per user. And by far our most popular platform is our Premium, $1,049 per year. That works out to roughly $83 per month or $27 per month per user. And you can learn more about pricing and features at RCReports.com. As a thank you for joining us today live or viewing this recording on demand, we have special discounted pricing for you, and you can learn more about that at demo.rcreports.com. I mentioned a little earlier that RCReports had an excellent track record in IRS examinations and in court. We've also built an excellent reputation with leading educators around the country, such as Bianna Whitlock with the NCPE or the folks at Gear Up, Bob Jennings at Tax Speaker. Not only did these folks use RCReports, they recommend it in their seminars. Across the country, there are 3 nationally known reasonable compensation experts. All 3 of these experts use RCReports and also recommend it. The first is Michael Gregory, former IRS manager. He helped put together the IRS job aid on reasonable compensation. Ron Sr. literally wrote the book on reasonable compensation, and Stephen Kirkland is nationally renowned in the field. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me or someone on our team. We'd be happy to answer your questions, and if you're ready to add RCReports to your practice, please visit demo.rcreports.com for special pricing.